Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Midday Money Chat. My name is Angela Caban, and we're going to be speaking about empowering military families in personal finance. And we know that there's one way that we can do by reducing stress. We can help by improving their financial skills, their knowledge, as well as overall empowering them to successfully maintain their goals. So just a little bit about military saves. That's one of our top goals. We pride ourselves in working with like-minded organizations that promote healthy savings behaviors. And you can take the first step by taking the Military Saves Pledge over at militarysaves.org, or if you prefer to get text messages, as many people do, feel free to text the keyword military saves to 877-877 to get started. And if you're not familiar with the pledge is pretty much a pledge you make to yourself by creating a simple savings plan that works for you. Not everybody is in the same stage or life cycle. And after you take that pledge, you have the accountability check, and you will receive emails, text reminders, free resources, as well as a free financial counseling session, if you wish to do so, as well as your free credit score. And we also have some realistic tips to keep you on track towards your savings goal, whatever that might be. So with that being said, I am so excited to get this conversation started today. I am so happy to introduce our guest, Shannon Razsadin. She is the Executive Director of the Military Family Advisory Network, also known as MFAN, an active duty Navy spouse and a mom of 2 toddlers who is currently residing in Rhode Island. She is also one of 3 civilian advisors to the Secretary of Defense on the Military Family Readiness Council, and is regularly called on national and local media to weigh in on military-related topics. So I'd like to welcome Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Angela. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for making the time. How are things in Rhode Island with 2 toddlers?
It's been an adventure. I think many of us are in this situation. It's a Groundhog Day part, question mark, however many days we've been in this, but, grateful that we live here and, can be outside as much as possible. But it's certainly an adventure, and grateful for the opportunity to be able to work from home, though, too. For MFAN, we're a 100% remote organization, so we haven't had to pivot too much, but it's still a challenge juggling those kiddos.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've had a lot of people actually say that because military saves the same thing. We work from home. However, we've never worked from home during a global pandemic. So it's had its challenges. So I think this is actually a plus for us. We can add that as military spouses to our resume, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd rather not have to, but here we are.
For sure. So before we get started, I'm super excited about our chat today. And for those of you who might not know, I actually served on the MFAN advisory board for 2 years, 2017 to 2019. Super excited to have MFAN here today. It's an organization I truly believe in, doing fantastic work. And I think when we're talking about empowering military families, whether that be in their finances, it's something that is a topic near and dear to both our hearts in our organizations. As well as thinking finances isn't exactly something that's something sexy or fun to talk about. It's not a topic that people usually want to eagerly open about. It's very personal. So we do hope that when others see these conversations being had, that it can make an impact on how they can approach, their finances. So before getting started and jumping in on this wonderful topic, can you tell us a little bit about the Military Family Advisory Network, any initiatives that you have for military families in personal finance?
Of course. So really, I want to ditto what you said as far as an incredible organization. We've worked with Military Saves since 2015. And just the growth and the impact and how you've been able to pivot to really meet the needs that military families have. It's incredible. And I am a text message subscriber. And so I get the text messages, especially on paydays. And so just really appreciate the good work and that reminder. And sometimes saving especially is not front of mind. And so having that ping really does help. So thank you so much for having me, Angela. I'm Shannon Razsadin, Executive Director of MFAN. We've been around for 8 years now, and what we do is we work in the military family space to really understand the challenges that military families are facing. And then we work really hard through research and through our advisory board to be a megaphone for military families, to bring the true lived experiences of modern military families to those who are in decision-making roles so that they're empowered with the best information possible. And then we also work hard to make sure that military families are aware of the resources that are out there and designed to serve them, including resources around personal finance. And so we really are focused always at having our ear to the ground, making sure that data informs all the work that we do, and really focus on building bridges and making sure that we're getting that information to people, being that trusted voice, and at any time we can, doing all that we can to inform those who are in decision-making roles related to the livelihood of military families. So we do have several areas where we work in the personal finance space. I'll start with the research. So MFAN has a very robust research practice led by Dr. Shelley Kimball and Dr. Jen Hurwitz. And we really work hard using mixed methods and hearing from people in their own words about what they're experiencing in all areas of life. And one of the cornerstones of our research has always been financial health and well-being, understanding, types of debt, the stress that's associated with that, what people do in situations of financial crisis. And it's really given us some good insight to not only the symptoms, but also the root causes of a lot of different areas. And one of the things that's been really fascinating for us, we just released findings from our most recent research effort last month, is how interconnected finances is with everything. So you look at mental health, you look at loneliness, you look at connection, everything, employment. It's really tied into every area of life. And that's not just for military. It's, I think, perpetuated in some cases for military families because of some of the unique experiences we have, but it's super important. And so because of that, we really wanted to figure out how we can best connect military families to the best in class resources that exist and use a delivery model that will resonate. And so we built this program, MilSense, which is a financial education social learning program, and it's a roadmap. So depending on where you are in the military life cycle, you are introduced to the best resources out there in a way that makes sense and also gives you a platform so you can talk about what you're learning. So we know that adults learn best when you have the opportunity to engage, ask questions, and that's been a real cornerstone. And Military Saves since day one has been a key component in encouraging people to take that pledge, to sign up, to get those reminders. And right now, I think it's especially important. We don't know what the next 6 months and year will look like. And we know that families, some are struggling, some are doing okay. Some have really benefited from some of the aid and relief that's been out there, which is great. But we have to keep in mind that there's a lot more that's going to come and we don't know what that looks like. And so saving and having that nest egg is so important.
Yeah. And I just love that concept of meeting people where they are, because again, there are so many different scenarios that we're all in when it comes to our finances, different stages in our life. So I think it's so important to really have that messaging directed towards where they are and meeting them where they are. And you don't see that a lot in the personal finance space. So it's refreshing, as a military spouse, to see other organizations really saying, yeah, we might want to change the approach, communication to how we're talking to service members and their families. So as I had mentioned a little bit earlier when we were, introducing this segment, people are intimidated by personal finances. I know I was when I was younger. You kind of shut down before they begin to talk about it because perhaps they have like a fear of not understanding, and it's almost like a disempowering trap. That's how I always seen it. So as both a military spouse and a professional who's working, in the military community, what are you seeing or hearing from families when it comes to the discussion and the topic of money?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Angela. People, finances in general, it's an area of stress. It's an area of angst. And when you're in a situation where you need help, the last thing that you need is a lecture. And it causes people to shut down and be reluctant to seek out help in the future because, they may be doing the best that they can. And we also know that when someone's in a crisis, it's not the right time to be saying, well, you should have saved, or, are you reading your LES regularly? What are you, contributing to TSP? it's a time to get those basic emergency needs met. And then down the road, when they're out of the crisis situation, to have some of those conversations that empower them to take control so they hopefully don't end up in the situation again of needing emergency support. And that's something that's so important. I know for me, like finance, especially a few years ago, it's something I did not want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's scary. It's confusing in a lot of ways. And so what we've tried to do through MillSense is make it as conversational as possible. So to take the language that has a ton of jargon and is just daunting, you know, frankly, and bring it to a place where people can easily understand it. You know, we don't need a situation where people have to figure out how to read between the lines or further complicate things, but we need to get people the best information possible and do it in a way where we're not making them nervous, because the reality is people are probably already nervous around finances in general.
And the fact that they're taking that step, right? That first step, yeah, to acknowledging that I don't want to say that they have a problem with their finances, but it's almost like a checkup, like you go to the doctor. I think it's something that even if you are not struggling and you're doing well, you need to reassess where you are financially. So
and it's a shift, right? So it's like, how do we change this to a conversation that everyone's having, right? It has kind of a stigma around it, and it's, whereas we can have a conversation of, you know, yeah, we all need to focus on our financial health. It's part of, you know, our planning for our future. It's part of our health and well-being in a lot of respects. And so I think that if we can get used to having conversations around financial health, it will become easier to talk to and will hopefully break down some of those barriers, whether they perceived or real.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm just even remembering back to when I first started working, and, you know, the fundamentals of money, I think, are very intimidating. And I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or just like, you know, as you get older, but I think if we develop and if we change the way we're speaking about it and helping people understand it, and similar to like there's military jargon everywhere, you know, all these acronyms to remember, you take it upon yourself to learn those basics. You know, you take that first step and then you give yourself like a context for understanding those terms. I think you could realize very quickly how empowering financial planning can be, you know, and how you can really see it as something that doesn't have to frighten you. Mm-hmm. You know, for sure. Yes. I love that concept of really just changing how we're talking about finances. So, while we're on the topic of empowerment, of course, Military Saves does believe in sharing stories of empowerment through personal finance. We have our Saver Stories. And I know that MFAN is quite the storyteller when it comes to military families in all various topics. And I've been lucky enough to hear from others who've experienced similar life-changing situations. So in your experience, do you see this changing the way people think about spending and saving, if they're open and talking about it? How are you seeing that affecting families?
Yeah, I think that you hit a really sweet spot when you're able to marry up the data and the personal story, right? Because it can help you feel like you're not alone in this. And also just you know, when we're advising those in, you know, policy making roles, that data is critical. But when we're supporting families, they're less concerned about the data. They're more concerned about getting the help for themselves and their families. And by seeing a success story from someone else, it's like, okay, I can do this. They did this. I can do this. My family can do this. And it's reassuring. And so we really, similar to Military Saves, focus on the combination of scientific data with storytelling to really, you know, break down some of those barriers, but also provide that rich data that can be used by many to inform positive change. And that's something that with the Military Family Financial Readiness Coalition that MFAN hosts, we're always sharing information, and sharing information not only about the landscape and what's going on related to financial health, but also what's working. You know, if an organization is seeing success in a certain area, well, we can all learn from that because we all share the same end goal, which is healthy, happy military families. And obviously personal finance is a huge component of that. So yeah, I think that storytelling is critical. We looked at loneliness quite a bit in this research, and incorporated the UCLA loneliness scale, which helps us to see not only if families are experiencing loneliness, but where they fall on that scale. And one of the most surprising, in some cases, tidbits of data that we found was that those who were in situations of financial stress were lonelier. And then when you read their experiences and, their stories behind that, it's because, they don't have the resources to go out and do things, to be social. They're getting in the mindset of having to tell their kids over and over, oh no, we can't do that. And that breaks you down after a while. And so when you can save, no matter how much, I think it really does help in a lot of different areas of life. And we're just, I think, starting to see the impact of that and what that's going to look like, during COVID and post-COVID once we come out the other side.
Yeah, and interesting enough, this data that was released, your 2019 Military Family Support Programming Survey is pre-COVID. And we recently we attended the release event, and unfortunately to us, we're not surprised when we came to the emergency savings part of the survey and overall finances, because we know that this continues to be a huge issue in our community. So there was 27.4% of currently serving military, 49.2% of veterans, and then 22.2% of military retiree respondents. And they're saying that they have less than $500 in emergency savings or no emergency savings at all.
Right.
So, and again, this is pre-COVID.
Right.
So based on those results, how does MFAN, plan to tackle the savings crisis? Because that's exactly what it is.
Collaboration, really working together, sharing the data. We're not going to solve all the problems ourselves. And that's frankly inappropriate for us to try to do that. And so we really try to make sure that the data is heard, it's received, it's acted on, and that the data is actionable, right? So we ask questions about, how do you like to, experience financial counseling or get financial education? Because it's not just about, okay, what's the problem? It's how do we get to the solution, right? And so we learned that military families are looking for a combination of customized in-person or during COVID, Zoom or phone counseling or education, and then also online. So they want the flexibility to access it when they need it, but they also want the customized support that's tailored to their experiences and their family's needs. And so that's the type of information that we're really focused on sharing and working with organizations like Military Saves, like others who participate in the Military Family Financial Readiness Coalition, to make sure that we're working together. No one wants to see redundancy or duplicative effort. And we can really, I think, learn a lot from each other and the successes and leverage this data to do as much good as possible. Because frankly, military families don't care who solves the problem or who helps them, just that they're helped and the problem solved. And so that's really what we're focused on.
Yeah, and it starts becoming a little overwhelming too when you see the amount of resources that are kind of pushed out there to military families. And I know we're really big on stressing on the importance of seeing that personal, financial counselor on the installation. Obviously now with COVID-19, that's changing, the way that they're receiving that assistance. So we always want to be mindful of, like you were saying, the various ways to get that help, or again, the session that they need just to kind of reassess where they are in their goals. And because we're very goal oriented. As you know, so really fun question now, because I feel like we can go on and on talking about the data and a lot of really great resources. What is your personal finance tip for saving, something that has worked specifically for you?
Oh gosh. Well, if you ask my husband, he would tell you that I'm terrible at saving, and because the swipe to purchase function on Amazon has made it interesting, especially during COVID. But for me, I think it's setting goals, right? And so it's understanding, okay, if we're able to save this much, it's going to get us to here. And one of the things that my dad actually raised me to do is, when I made any money, be it through babysitting or, I mowed neighbors' lawns, that type of thing, is he told me and taught me to, save some for, short-term savings. So like the fun, savings, and then some for education. And that really helped me. And I still follow that. So I know I'm talking to a Peloton lover over here. But, for me, I'm saving for a Peloton. We want to get a Peloton. So there's that. But then we are also saving for our kids, education and things like that. And so the kids' education, while absolutely incredibly important, it's less fun, right? So it's abstract, it's really far away, but there is more, not instant gratification, but a shorter window for when we could actually get that Peloton. And so I think for me, it's being pretty tactical. It's setting those goals and following through them. Because if you reach the goal, you should get the thing. We live in a world where there is a value in rewarding good behavior, and so we should make sure that we're rewarding ourselves too when we do meet those goals.
I love that your father taught you that. I mean, you hear so many stories, again, because we have so many stories coming to us where that's not a conversation they had with their parents. It was, finance was like taboo. It's like kind of like politics and religion. You just didn't have that discussion because it was personal. So the fact that he taught you that lesson and now you can pass that on to your children, that's just fantastic. And a little tip, if you just get rid of the Amazon app from your phone, it is helpful because I've had to do that.
I know, that's a really good idea. But then they also, there's Amazon Smile, and now Amazon Smile's on the app, and I'm like, well, I'm helping MFan, I'm helping military families.
Okay, that's
rationalize it.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's really good. Like, just kind of like now when you're trying to shop small, right? I'm just trying to help this local business, and my husband's kind of looking at me like, no, you just want to go out to eat again. So.
Yes, but you can, I don't like the saying kill two birds with one stone, but, one of my former supervisors, feed two birds out of one hand. And, I think that there are, we have to make sure that we build in opportunities for reasonable fun and happiness, right?
I love
and so saving is incredibly important, but it shouldn't put you in a position where you're prohibiting that element of your life and that happiness. And so I think that it's setting, the savings goal for one family is not going to be the same as a savings goal for another family. And so I think that setting those realistic expectations and celebrating the wins is super important.
I love that. And no judgment for what that family is saving for, right? The goal.
Exactly.
One might be saving. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's an emergency fund, or
that should be the first.
That should be the first, yes.
Yeah. But
or the Peloton.
Right. It was you have to have that nest egg, and
sure.
One of the things, not to go back to the data consistently, but people didn't know where to go also if they were in that emergency. That financial crisis. And so I think that there's an opportunity that we have to do more education there, and also work with those who are in those roles of providing that emergency assistance to explain some of the barriers that families are experiencing and why they might not go. And I think that gets back to the education and empowerment versus feeling like it's a lecture. And that's just really important, especially when someone's, having a hard time.
Yeah. And like you said, it's so important to let them know that it's there for them. Don't feel any shame. That's what it's there for. Everybody falls down. Lord knows we have plenty of times, while my husband was active duty. So it's just one of those things where you kind of have to put the pride aside and know that that's what it's there for, to help you through those very difficult times. And, I think now with COVID, not really knowing where we're going moving forward, even in the next 6 months, it has military families very stressed out, So I think, seeing this data that MFAN is providing is definitely going to help other like-minded organizations in their own programs to continue assisting military families. So that's so very important. Could you let people know where they can learn more about MFAN, where they can get some more information about the survey?
Of course. If you go to our website, militaryfamilyadvisorynetwork.org, or you can just Google Military Family Advisory Network. And, we have a lot of information on our website, not just from this most recent survey that we did, but also we've been doing the survey since 2013. It's every other year. And some of the things that are fascinating to see is just the trends, right? And what we're seeing consistent findings around. And like I said, finance has really been a consistent cornerstone of this research effort. So Definitely encourage people to check out the research and also check out MilSense. It's a really great platform. There are 5 unique program tracks. So Service Academy and ROTC, actively serving, transitioning, veteran, retiree, just because we know there are different resources depending on where you are in that life cycle. One of the things that we hear about most is we have an exercise in there where people do a comparison of their current earnings and what they would be getting in retirement. And that is a shock to people because when you take out, BAH and some of the other allowances and add-on pays and, really strip it down to what the basic pay is and what 50% of that looks like, it's really important that people go into that transition out of the military with eyes wide open, and that happens sooner rather than later. So if you're thinking that this might be coming up in the next couple of years, really start having these conversations around finance now, not just like when you're signing the paperwork to get out of the military.
Yeah, we see that so much. The retirement planning should not happen as you're getting ready to retire. I love that you're talking about, taking a look at it from couple years, maybe even 5 years, and seeing what that looks like. I mean, even as, a spouse, I am constantly looking at that because, we're not getting any younger and it's important to plan. So what we're going to do for everybody's, all those links that Shannon had just mentioned, we're going to go ahead and put them in the comments below. That way you can feel free to check them out. There's a lot of amazing information over on MFAN's website, so feel free to click on that. Shannon, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like we can keep the conversation going.
We'll need a part 2. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we're just so appreciative of you coming on here and sharing your expertise on this topic, all the great work that you're doing for so many families through MFAN. We're just so grateful for the partnership as always. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So ultimately, personal finance is personal. So not just in the sense that values vary from person to person, but also in the sense that it's up to each individual to really decide how they think and act around money. And that's not to say that external circumstances can't do and don't make things challenging, which we all know in military life, that is a reality for us. But realizing that the money choices that we make in response are up to us, and it's hugely empowering. And we hope that Military Saves can be a first step in the right direction for you. So head on over to militarysaves.org, sign up online to receive helpful tips, reminders, and an accountability check-in for you to stay on track with your savings goal, whatever that might be. And again, feel free to text the keyword Military Saves to 877-877 if you prefer to reach us via text messages. And lastly, check out our Facebook group, Military Savers. It's where we offer even more empowerment and support to families, no matter where they are in their savings journey. We look forward to our next Midday Money Chat, which happens here every month at Military Saves. As always, stay safe and healthy, and thank you all for tuning in. Have a great week.